fights with passion, and he inspires.
Are you ready for a war?
All right, welcome back to From 8 Arbitration. And today I got a treat for you. I just had two gentlemen come in and do an episode. I really think you're going to enjoy it. It's Mr. Colin Smalley and Chris Dols. They're with the IFPTE. It's a federal union. They cover a bunch of stuff. I'm going to let them talk about it themselves. But we've been talking a little while about them coming on. They have their big vote next week in New Orleans, and they're trying to change their union, kind of like we're doing here on From 8 Arbitration with the CLC. But had a very good conversation. They came down and came to the house, and we talked for about an hour and 15 minutes. And so I'm going to play that for you. Two great individuals that have a heart for their members. And they're just like us. It's crazy how different they are, how similar they are. And I'll let them tell y'all that. But it's a very interesting conversation about what they're trying to do. I will be doing an episode tomorrow. All right? I'll be doing an episode tomorrow. And I'm going to go the fuck off about something that was sent to me and some different things that are going on. I wasn't going to do one, but I'm going to do that tomorrow. And I've been simmering on this for a while. Next week, Tyler Vassar is going to come on. I was just going to kind of do another Salted Peanuts next week. But Tyler Vassar is going to come on. He wanted to come on before the convention, so we're going to do that. Then I'm going to have John Poskin on after that, then JB on after that, and then I will do one right before the convention, okay? But tomorrow I'm going to do one, like I said, I'm going to go the fuck off, and I will not be happy. And it's something that I received from someone that Labor had put out in an email, and we're going to talk about it, and I'm going to talk about my union a little bit, and all in the name of education, all right? So, but here it is, talking with Mr. Colin Smalley and Chris Doles, all right? I really think you're going to enjoy it, so I will not be coming back on the other side of it. I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. I'm going to do an episode tomorrow night, all right? So here it is, Mr. Smalley and Mr. Doles. Enjoy. All right. This is From 8 Arbitration. I got two gentlemen in my dining room. Now, I've got a new mic, and so we're testing this out. I think it's going to sound all right, but y'all know me and technology. I suck at that. But I got Colin Smalley and Chris Doles. And they're going to talk to y'all about their union. And I've been talking to them a little bit, and they're fascinating. How much they cover, I had no idea. How much territory y'all cover as far as how many different people are in y'all's union and what all y'all do. But I'm going to step out of the way. I'm going to let them talk. And then they're kind of in the same situation we are with the NALC, kind of displeased with things that are going on in their union. And so, kind of like we are with ours. I don't know if they're going to be as profane as me, but I told them whatever they wanted to say. Whatever they wanted to say, man, y'all are used to it. So, guys, take over. Tell everybody why y'all sitting in my house.
Cool. Tom, you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. I'm Colin Smalley. I'm from IFPTE Local 777 in Chicago. IFPTE stands for the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. So we're an AFL-CIO union, and we're a lot, like Corey said, cover a lot of ground. We'll get into that here in a minute.
Yeah, and I'm Chris Doles. I'm also IFPTE Local 98, which is New York. And we cover also Army Corps of Engineers. And our union, IFPTE, straddles both the United States and Canada. In the US, we cover private sector folks like Boeing workers. We have lots of local public sector folks like in San Francisco and New Jersey, and other places in New England. And our sector is federal sector, which is the connection that brought us here to your place, Corey, because we are trying both within our union, within IFPTE, and with every other federal sector union that we can meet and get to know, we're trying to build a federal sector-wide movement to be stronger together. And that's really one of the major terms of our battle inside our union is the need for a more assertive sector-wide strategy, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
And what we're doing right now, we're 1 week out from an election. Our convention, I know y'all's convention's coming up. Our convention is 1 week from today. It's Sunday, it's going to be next Sunday, is when we kick it off with our federal caucus. And within IFPT, there are 35 locals that represent all sorts of different kinds of federal employees. We're here, we were down in Huntsville yesterday talking to NASA workers at Marshall Space Flight Center. So, I mean, we're talking literal rocket scientists and all sorts of folks there at NASA. We represent NASA workers all over the country in 5 different centers, I believe. We also, just earlier today, we're talking to one of the officers that are local at the Tennessee Valley Authority, so the Engineering Association there. We have a lot of workers at naval shipyards all over the country and in the Congressional Research Service, the Government Accountability Office, the Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So we've got a little bit of everything.
One of the things I think is worth kind of drawn out to compare what we have in common with you guys in the NALC is that, we're obviously both federal sector. You guys are on the postal side, we're on the federal civil service side, and we're even more carved up than you all. I understand that you guys have 4 different unions that represent the staff that work for the postal service, and there's somewhat 600 or 700,000 total. In ours, the numbers are like 2.1 million total. Of those, about 1.5 million are represented by one union or another. And it's the whole alphabet soup of all the agencies, right? All the ones Colin just rattled off that IFPTE covers, but also all the others. And within them, there are 4 or 5 or 6 locals, unions, so AFGE, NTEU, NEFI, the National Federation of Federal Employees, IFPTE, which is ours, and then there's a whole alphabet soup of other smaller. Some of them are big unions, but with smaller pieces of the federal puzzle, if you will. And again, one of our big picture challenges that we see in front of us is that we're so carved up and there's no unity in action, despite that we share so many of the same issues, whether it's OPM regs or the pay that we face that's set by Congress or the general hostility of the workplace. Because management, obviously, the tone is set by higher ups, whether it's the White House or Congress or OPM policy. And we have so many opportunities to not just seek efficiencies in our organizing, but also move into action together. And the federal sector has really suffered from being divided, and not just by agencies, but also by unions. And even within our own union, there's not enough coordination. And that's really the core of our platform.
All right. So y'all talked about your pay is set by Congress.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that because we have collective bargaining. So we're in the middle of that right now. It's been going on, seems like, for 6 years now. we don't have any contract. We don't know when the hell that thing's going to be even brought to us. We keep hearing that there's an arbitration set. It's been set for about a year now, I think. But so what are you talking about? Your pay is set by Congress.
So I guess first I'll start with the exception. So like Tennessee Valley Authority, they're elected postal service in that they're a government-owned corporation, so they do bargain for their pay. The congressional folks can bargain for their pay, but most of us are under, what you'd call Title V, the general civil service regulations. And so the pay there are a few pay systems. The 2 largest are the federal wage system, which is you can think of as sort of like blue collar jobs set on by wage surveys around the country. And that's the federal wage system. And then there's what they call the general schedule, which is this chart that's got a bunch of grades and a bunch of steps, and it has to do with longevity, but also the job duties. And then there's within local areas, they have adjustments that they can make and that kind of thing. This system's been around a long time and it's got a lot of flaws to it. And so one of the things that we're seeing is as federal sector union reps is that agencies are doing all sorts of different things to try to pay their people better because they don't have that control. They can't just overhaul the pay system. They can't just bargain something with the unions. they're doing sneaky little things. They'll come up with a special salary rate. They'll come up with just inflate the grades. Say, well, we'll hire you at a grade higher than maybe everyone else would hire for the same job, and attract the best people into our agency. Because of course that runs away, and then it gets meeting us again. And so there's a lot that struggles, especially now that Congress doesn't. They barely fund the government from year to year.
Yeah, and we're often the first folks who are on the chopping block. And just to be clear, we collectively bargain too, but wages, benefits are just not in the scope of bargaining. So our entire scope of bargaining is working conditions. And that makes it really important that the union fight around favorable working conditions. That can mean telework, that can mean how you request overtime or how overtime is divvied up. It can mean certainly the union's access to agency resources like an office space and our ability to conduct our business as a union, to conduct representational business. So we bargain over a lot, but not nearly as much as you guys if you cover pay and benefits, certainly not the private sector. And just like you guys, we also don't have the right to strike. So there are these various restrictions on us that, on the one hand, severely limit us, but in my opinion, also set the stage for a lot more creativity that our unions aren't taking full advantage of. And I think that's our specialty, is the kind of creative stuff within the space that we have.
So who is it? Like with the NALC, we have, I would call them an enemy, management, supervisors, managers, district managers, people that attempt to make our life hell, that don't go by our collective bargaining. Who is it that y'all, I mean, y'all need a union for what reason?
So we
Other
have
than,
local management, and they are the people who we have to deal with. We have really crummy managers in some places, and our collective bargaining is very much targeted at fixing those parts of our agencies. And our enforcement strategy is all about shaming those bad supervisors and bringing them into line and raising the standard, enforcing those working conditions that we negotiated. But ultimately, our management, because Congress sets our pay, this is one of our major talking points, is Congress is our management. The White House is our management. They're the ones who set our pay, and then we have to treat them like management. And this is the biggest difference between us and the people, the incumbents that we're running against. The leadership of our union, unfortunately, like many unions, sees their relationship with Congress, the White House, I dare say the political establishment that's heavily inflected by the Democratic Party political establishment. And full transparency, I'm no Republican. They often accuse me of being one because I'm so critical of their deferential relationship to the Democratic Party. But it becomes a real problem when they are management.
yeah.
You don't defer to management when you're a union.
Management's never going to have our interests in mind. So the fact that we voted for somebody, the fact that we went out and knocked on doors, or helped raise funds or whatever, at the end of the day, they're not going to do what's in our interest.
Yeah, that's funny you say that, because management here at the Postal Service despises the union, and therefore they despise the carrier. And I'm going to read something on an episode here coming up. Somebody sent me that is, the perfect example of that. But yeah, when you're talking about Congress and the White House, that's your boss, and sometimes your leaders are kind of, I guess you want to say they're in bed with them, but
They work for them.
ours, dare say, gets accused of that. Being in bed with DeJoy and those people from labor, the way things that they overlook things, they allow things to happen that generally a union wouldn't allow. And that's kind of the main thing. I know that y'all said y'all been listening a little bit, and I apologize for the language, but that's kind of my issue with my current leadership in our union, is that you're not being what, as we say, an agent. You're not being that agent for us and protecting us fully. Like, we receive no tax money, so we're different than y'all, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're self-sustaining postal service, so
Right.
we kind of get away with things. Y'all are kind of held a little bit tighter, I would say, by Congress and that, because y'all do receive tax money, and therefore they kind of put clamps on you, I'd imagine, a little bit more than us, because we're fully self-sufficient.
Every time that the government almost shuts down or does shut down, we members are wondering, Well, their health benefits. They're wondering about whether they're going to have to go to work on Monday. Things have gotten a little better since they passed the rule that says we get paid retroactively anytime that happens. But for years, all those shutdowns previous to 2019, there was a question of whether or not they would even get paid.
But then there was people who had to go to work. So I represent lock and dam workers that lock the bars up and down the river. And they have to go to work.
They can't just not show up.
Right.
Yeah. See, yeah.
And so, I mean, we have so much stress from that. And yeah, I appreciate what you said before about you can be respectful in your interactions with management. And whether that's, my direct supervisor at work or it's a member of Congress, be respectful. I can work with them and come to an agreement, a solution. We can resolve things amicably. But at the end of the day, like you say, my allegiance is to the workers I represent,
Yeah.
the workers that I work alongside. I'm not a full-time union rep. I do my normal work, and then my union stuff is generally in addition to that.
Yeah.
We call it the independence principle. You have to be independent from management. And when management is so political and it's Congress and the White House, you have to be independent from them. But so many of our leaders in these unions, ours included, will sooner side with and worry about the relationship to this or that politician than they will fighting the fight for the membership.
Yeah.
The best example is that the FLRA doesn't have a majority yet. We've been 4 years into this Biden White House, and Federal Labor Relations Authority, which is like our NLRB for the Federal Civil Service. I know you guys probably have your own special postal specific thing. We still don't have a Biden appointed majority because I think Congress, Chuck Schumer most of all, as the head of the Senate, they like it that way. Their management, they like Labor Week.
Mhm.
And our unions have yet to organize the kind of principled independent fight to hold their feet to the fire. And that's one of the things that we've tried to do. And it hasn't made us popular with Congress, hasn't made us popular with the leadership of our union, but it feels like the only way forward to actually win the kind of leadership we need at the FLRA.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm asking so many questions, but this is all unique.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, because, and I was talking to you earlier about collective bargaining contracts, and you're like, y'all, everybody has their own separate contract.
Yeah.
So how do y'all keep up with that? I mean, you have one president, right? You have one president that's over all of this?
So our union has a president who sits on top of all the different locals, and yeah, a bunch of them are federal sector, and a bunch of them are private, and some of them are even Canadian, right? It's this sprawling federation, and it's very unique. It's very distinct from the NALC for
Yeah.
sure. We're running to be the VPs who lead the federal sector of IFPTE. But even within there are 35 different locals with 70 some different bargaining units, with each their separate contract and different negotiated grievance procedures. But there's some commonality because we're all governed by the same federal labor law. And that's where I want to give so many props to what I've learned from your show about what can be done in educating the membership on how to be a better steward, on how to be a better representative, on how to be a worker who just knows how to stand up for themselves. Because even though the negotiated grievance procedure may be different in shop by shop, there's enough common threads that if our union were to commit to educating the rank and file, as in the way that you do with your radio show. Like I was coming over here listening to your show, I was like, we need a radio program that teaches people this stuff. Every union needs a radio program, but ours doesn't have it.
Yeah. And we have 15 regions, 15 different business agents, and it's all like their own separate unions. And I've said that before, it's nobody wants to get over in this one and help, and nobody wants to, you could stay out of our region. To me, that's completely unacceptable because we're all with the NALC. We all should be educating everybody, and whoever's best at that, that's it. When I'm business agent, whoever's best at educating, I want you in my region, educating, helping.
Yeah.
And I think that you were talking about that earlier about, I don't know what you want to get into. It's about, going to kind of getting torpedoed by your own president. Just some made up bullshit. And that's kind of what we're dealing with now. Stay out of my area. Y'all mind your business. Don't get in mine, and to me, that's not a union. And, but what you were talking about something earlier. What was that? If you want to talk about it, if you don't, I'll put you on the spot.
Well, I guess one example that I have is at the beginning of this administration, President Biden put out an executive order about expanding voting leave. So that, before the status quo was that on voting day itself, if your polls were certain hours, then you could have up to 4 hours off to go vote. And this new executive order said that agencies should, and that's the word my agency got hung up on, my management, but agencies should expand that so that it would cover voting, so that it would cover municipal elections, so that it would cover volunteering in your community as an election judge. These things that we can do to improve our communities. And so my local went to management and said, hey, we want to expand your policies to include all these things. That's something we want to do. And they said, no, we can't do that because, the Department of Defense hasn't updated their policy and the Department of the Army hasn't updated their policy, and we can't do anything until they do. And so I had reached out to our international office and said, hey, can y'all help me because I'm getting just bureaucratic roadblocks here. My local management's saying, we'll do it. We'd love to work with you on this, but we can't. Our hands are tied by this red tape, right? I said, can you all help me clear out that red tape? And
they've got relationships with people at the White House and political appointees. Like, we know where the places are that need the joints that need the grease. We know where they are. Ask the leadership to go apply the grease, but
they told me I needed to go file a case with the FLRA and file an unfair labor practice charge,
which you did.
Which I did, and then we lost because there were the weasel words in the executive order. It said should instead of shall, and so I went back to leadership. I said, all right, can we go talk to the political appointees? And we had legislative week last February, and instead, this is what we're going to fix on legislative. That's legislative week. We're going to no. And so we really got access to those resources because it's all a model of, we can't call them too often or they won't take our calls. We can't be too demanding, and that posture is, I think, more focused on their relationship in the Washington D.C. order of things than it is about you're on some local educator. Like where is that love for our workers?
Yeah,
and so there it's more of a disappointment. I'm not going to get into some of the things that we really. Some of our bigger agreements is with some of the folks in the union. That stuff, we're trying to run a positive campaign.
right.
Geek out. We've almost made it. I don't see any need to get down and do that now. But because there's so many things that are disappointing, we've got a positive vision. We want to see action. We want to see that we can provide not this sense that, well, news, and there'll be one or two officers at the local level, and they'll represent you. They'll go talk to management. They'll fight the fight for you, and then from those local leaders, the national union will pick the best two or three, the biggest fighters, the go-getters, and they'll be your voice at the national level. And nobody's supposed to trouble themselves. I think that workers should have that voice. They should be working together. That's our strength.
Right. I call it "Don't you worry about a thing" unionism.
Right.
The leadership of the union is "Don't you guys worry about anything. We don't actually need mass engagement and education of the workforce. We got this.
Right.
Don't worry." But we've seen, and I think proven positively in our locals, that when the rank and file are educated and mobilized and organized and willing to confront management and sometimes piss them off, and that's okay because that's the union's job.
Yeah.
That's where you get the goods. Collective action, democratic principles inside our union. Those are the main animating principles of our campaign and the way we do things in our locals.
I always preach this is that, to be successful, you need two things. You got to love the city letter carrier, and y'all's, that'd be
Federal
different.
servants, yeah.
You got to love them. And to do this, to me, you should do it because you love them initially. Like I've been a city letter carrier for 32 years. I love the city letter carrier. Took on being a shop steward in 2006. An advocate in 2012 because I love the city letter carrier and I do not want to see them run over, which happens often. I mean, to me, the Postal Service is the worst run organization in the country. I would put that number one. We're by far, and of course it's federal. It's too much fat. I mean, I could go on and on and on. This is for y'all, but and you got to educate. You got to educate your members.
Yeah.
Now, if you love me, you're gonna want to educate me.
Yeah.
And ours is not like that.
They're hoarding the knowledge.
That is exactly what happens.
Because these people want to hold on to their power and
Yes.
the knowledge.
Yeah.
Worried that, oh, well, if I'm indispensable to this organization, then they can't without me. They can't, I'm safe.
If somebody knows what I know, then what good am I? It's the exact opposite of that.
And it's handpicked successors.
Yeah.
Like they are constantly identifying who's the most pliant and compliant, up and coming, promising person who has some technical capacity, but isn't going to upset the apple cart, isn't going to, challenge our basic political strategy. And they handpick their successors. They're not used to any meaningful, competition for leadership. And I don't know what it is in the NALC. In our case, there's a real dearth of competition for leadership.
Yeah.
Part of what our union, I think, is struggling with right now is the fact that we're running against incumbents. I've never seen a competitive election at the national level. I haven't been active in that long, but 7 years I've been a member of the union.
Yeah.
Never heard of a competitive election.
Yeah.
And we represent the first one, and they're freaking out.
Well, this is the first one, and the good thing about, and I'll put a plug in for the CLC, Concerned Letter Carriers, is that it's made up of a bunch of people who had no desire to be at national.
Right.
That's not what they started. Like James Henry, he had no desire to go to national. They approached him.
Yeah.
And then when he saw things, how it's going, here's a guy that has fought against management for years and years and years, probably the best arbitration advocate we've ever had, and goes up there and he's like, hey, y'all aren't doing what you should be doing up here.
Yeah.
So we need to make a change, and other people's that I can't tell about anybody else that's on there, but other people that are on that CLC ticket are the same way. Hey, I have no interest in going to headquarters or national. That's not something that I have, been driven to do or strive to do or anything like that. And it sounds kind of similar to what y'all are dealing with, which is a good thing, because when you talk about it's just, plug and play, you're up next. We have a lot of those people that their only dream was to be at national. Once I get there, I'm a fat cat, can shut it down. And we're seeing that with our executive council. Of course, they shit all over these charges, against, I don't know if y'all kept up with that.
I got them up.
Yeah, but completely shit on that. And it's because they don't have that love for the city letter carrier. They put themselves ahead of us. When you are talking about Congress, they're putting that ahead of your members.
You know how patronizing they are to us whenever we dare to do something that might piss off a member of Congress? They're like, whoa, you just touched the third rail. You approached Chuck Schumer at the Labor Day parade and asked him about the status of these confirmations? And how dare you go outside of the chain of command? How dare you ask a stern question of a member of Congress? Well, I'm a union fighter.
Right.
That's what I'm doing here. And you guys are just ready to give up on our demands just to preserve your relationship. What's the relationship worth?
Yeah.
If you can't get anything out of it.
That's odd how similar we are. When you talk about that.
Unions. I think we probably share a lot of things because we're federal.
Yeah.
But one thing, we met Tyler Vassar.
Yeah.
I know you've had on the
show.
Sharp kid. Coming.
Oh, yeah.
We met him at Labor Notes. The Labor Notes conference in Chicago just a couple months ago, to me, is my inspiration. And it showed to me that all the things we're facing, the lack of transparency in our union, the
Mm.
lack of basic democracy, the refusal to combat to actually confront management in a way that might piss them off, God forbid. Like all these fears that all of our union leaders have because they've been trained and brought up in a very risk averse approach to being union leaders. Well, there's a new labor movement, and
Yes.
you're it bubbling up in NALC, you and Tyler, and all the rest of you and your
Yeah.
listeners. We and there's a lot of other people behind us inside of IFPTE, and we know about the auto workers. And Sean Fain leading the auto workers, he comes out of this wing of we call ourselves the troublemaker wing of the labor movement, right? Yeah, you've
Like your
heard.
shirt, Troublemakers Union. I'm gonna have to get one of those. I
So
like
this
that.
Labor Notes has been doing this since 1979, and it is a rich trove of resources when it comes to these principles of building a fighting union, building a union that's willing to actually raise questions outside of the four walls of the workplace. Like, how can your union be a better advocate for your city? Like the Chicago Teachers Union. The reason they had such a successful strike 14 years ago and remade the terrain for teachers in this country is because they raised a slogan that was our teachers' working conditions are our students' learning conditions. And they said, you pay the teachers more, you put air conditioners in the classroom, you do all these things, you're going to make things better for your kids and for your families. And they finally overcame that divide that made it impossible for teachers to strike for decades. Every time Chicago teachers went to strike in the 1980s, 90s, and early 2000s, the city leadership would come down and turn all the families against the teachers. They were politically isolated and they were crushed.
Mm-hmm.
The Chicago Teachers Union changed that. And in the last 15 years, it's been spreading through the rest of the labor movement. And I think these tactics, a willingness to confront management, a willingness to raise broader demands and say we want to make not just our workplace better, but our society better. Like these are the principles of the new labor movement. And thank God they're here.
Yeah, it was about a year or so ago. You can kind of feel it. You look on social media, you go different places, you could kind of feel it. And I was telling, the people that listen to me, it's a ground roots uprising. You can feel that happening.
Yes.
Of those that say, I'm sick and tired of management. We deal with them all the damn time, but I'm sick and tired of my union not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and it's people who there's so much in our lives that is disheartening or disappointing or they're out to correct something. Where no matter it's everywhere, but we can. I'm from Chicago, and I know the NLC branch up there has done public demonstrations about
Yeah.
the violence that blood shoots on the street. The I know there's been demonstrations about heat injuries, illnesses, deaths
Yeah.
that volunteers experience, and we are out demonstrating for that. We are improving our communities. And there's a concept that we discussed at Labor Notes. We had this group that we called FUN, the Federal Unionist Network. The FUN. And Tyler was participating with us in that. I know there were a few postal workers there at Labor Notes. And so one of the things we talked about was a concept called bargaining for the common good. And it's this idea that we as public sector workers, that are we are critical parts of our communities. I'm a geologist by training. I work for the Army Corps of Engineers as a clean water regulator. We review and issue permits to make sure that when people are out developing, building new things or tearing down old things or whatever it is, that we're not polluting the water. My kids drink that water.
Mm-hmm.
I live in the community where I regulate, right? And so I have a vested interest. It's not some faceless bureaucrat situation. We're ready to advocate for these things. And so we can have that role. And I know that our members respond. We say when we raise their expectations, and I know that's a big part of your work too, is helping people understand that we can say no to some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When management's trying to break us down, or we've got these situations that are trying to crush working people, we can together fight back against that. So whether it's in the NALC, it's in IFPTE, it's in all these other places in this, this new labor movement. We're trying to get action,
Yeah.
not words, not gestures or performances, but action.
Yeah. And that's funny you say that because I had never, ever wanted to be anything with union other than a shop steward and advocate. I've always told myself I'm going to retire a city letter carrier until I saw how my union was in disarray. They're not, they're supposed to be my agent. So we're separate. You got the city letter carrier and you got your agent, which is the union. Everybody says, well, we're all the union. Well, that sounds good. But if your agent's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, it doesn't matter what you're doing on the workroom floor. You're going to get crushed because you have to have that agent represent you. An ideal workforce should be a city letter carrier come in, do their job. If you got unruly management, that agent comes in, addresses that, and then the city letter carrier has no idea what's going on the outside world. They come in, stick their mail, deliver their mail, and then they go home. And the union is taking the brunt of that. I talked about the movie 300 before, where they were talking, did y'all see the movie 300?
A long time ago.
Remember when they were laughing because they said that they were going to fire all those arrows, it was going to blot out the sun. And so when they shot all those arrows, all they did was stick up their shields, and it protected them. For me, that's the perfect example of the union. No matter what management does at any level, the union should be that shield and protect the carrier. The carrier should be able to come to work, do their job, free of any kind of harassment, bullying, and anything like that, because the union is shielding them from that.
Yeah.
And that's not what's happening. Matter of fact, we have a president now that kind of puts things into place that promotes that type of shit with this. I know I'm still in y'all show again, but with the
22
monitress with the scouters, there's 22 minutes. You've heard it. Those things. When you don't attack those things, you're not being that shield.
Totally.
Yeah.
You're exposing us to those arrows, and to me, that's what you're talking about.
Sure.
Be that agent. Protect your city letter carriers. To y'all, protect your members.
Yeah.
And y'all aren't having that, kind of like we're not having that.
The part of our campaign that addresses that, we call it radical competence. The way you get management in their place is that we're competent as the union reps, as the stewards, as the apparatus that makes spreads all that information, keeps us all on the same page, that kind of thing. And yeah, we have to have that. You can't just have work, shop floor militancy. But the union is when you have that spirit of what the supervisor shows up on the street and says, "What are you doing?" Or "I'm gonna count you down," and you say, "Steward." But it's watching each other, having each other's back, being ready to spread the word about how you can protect yourself, how you can assert your rights at work, and that paired with the ability of the union to bring those resources to bear, to be that economy of scale that gives us the access to learn from experienced advocates.
Yeah.
For somebody, when we took over our locals, my local had not been to an arbitration in years. We'd always settled with management. We'd always, at the local level, or we just chalked it up to a loss.
Totally. It was one of the first things I had to do. I called it recalibration. We had to recalibrate management to expect us to go all the way to arbitration every time.
Yeah.
It was a low stakes grievance. The offense was debatably a grievance in the first place because the person wound up getting a leave that was never approved.
Yeah.
I said, we're not only going to grieve, we're going to take this all the way, and management's going to hate it. And they're going to ask why, and they're going to say, because you don't respect our contract.
Right.
And you have a new president in the local, and we are going to take the first 1, 2, 10 grievances all the way to arbitration until you start thinking twice before you make the decision to spend $2,000 of taxpayers' money to take us to arbitration.
Yeah.
And sure enough, these days, they look a lot closer at our grievances before we go to arbitration.
We have lost, and I say this all the time, we have lost the sting of arbitration or the NALC because we've gotten into this pre-arb sessions. I don't know how y'all, I'm going to ask you about that in a second, y'all's grievance procedure.
Yeah, have it.
But arbitration is one of the biggest weapons we have. Like you say,
Because you can't strike.
management hates arbitration. They hate arbitration because they don't want to sit in there and be questioned by somebody that's a letter carrier like myself. They hate that. They despise it. It's below them to, just beneath them to come in there and have to answer to the union.
Equals.
Yes.
Well, some of them are allergic to the truth.
Yeah, yeah. And, when you get in there, you don't tell the truth, we're going to catch you not telling the truth. But they despise arbitration. And what these pre-arb sessions and all these things have done is we have lost that sting, that threat of arbitration. And I don't know if y'all listened to the episode Mr. Noble came on, and that's one of the things he said that I like so much is he said, take things to arbitration. You want to talk about non-compliance? Start taking things back to arbitration and quit, waterlogging the grievance process with these pre-arb sessions, this piss poor language like you was talking about, and our NALC now it's all about the money. It's no longer about the city letter care. It's about saving that money, arbitration money, and settling those cases. Like in New Orleans, they had 5,000 cases backlogged at the DRT, and they go in and do these sessions, and 2,400 cases get resolved just like that for pennies on the dollar. Well, that's a ploy by management. We can just bog down the system.
Totally.
And then after a while, they'll be like, hey, we got 5,000 grievances going there, and we're going to save millions of dollars on the city letter carrier's backs because the union doesn't file a grievance. City letter carrier brings the grievance forward, and the union files it for us. But that's not the union's grievance. It's the city letter carrier's grievance. So they don't give a damn, how much. But it's odd to hear y'all say that because I'm thinking, y'all are the same damn thing that we are. You're in the same boat that we are.
I mean, when you can't strike and you can't resolve differences through economic weapons, slowdowns, or the other tools that private sector has, you got binding arbitration and you're legally equals with management. And yeah, they hate it. I'll never forget, I was getting trained on arbitration by a staffer from the union, and they were trying to get my expectations nice and low. They were like, look, this grievance, and they were right on the technical grounds of that grievance in particular, wasn't a strong case. And I was like, well, I'm new. I want to learn it. For me, just the excuse to do it is, to recalibrate management, all that. But the thing that he tried to get my expectations so low. He said, it's not like you see on TV. It's not like you're going to get to cross-examine management. It's not like you're going to be able to and I was thinking to myself, really? Seems like that's the whole premise.
Right.
And then go through it, and he let it. And I'm texting him all the questions to ask, and he's kind of fumbling them. And I'm like, at some point, I kind of intervened in a way I probably shouldn't have. We lost that arbitration. And I was like, well, next time I'm doing this on my own. And it was exactly like TV.
Yeah.
I cross-examined the supervisor. I insisted that the second and third, the witnesses, the other representatives of management, leave the arbitration.
Yeah.
I asked them all the same questions. I compared all the discrepancies. I came at them from every angle, and the arbitrator, hands down, gave us everything we want. That woman is teleworking forever.
Yeah. Right.
Like it can be a platform for massive.
It's such a weapon. So talk to me about y'all's grievance procedure. If you don't.
Yeah.
So I know y'all have so many different factions. What is y'all? Does everybody have the same grievance procedure?
So this is so when we bargain a contract, we bargain what the grievance procedure looks like. And the one thing that's required by law is that it have a binding arbitration provision. But that's it. Everything from there is up to us to bargain with management. So mine in Chicago, for my local, we have a 3-step grievance process. So first we'll file first we have to try to resolve it informally. Whatever. That's good. Then we file with whatever supervisor made the decision or made the error. Yeah. Screwed our people over. We're gonna first file with them and give them a chance to take it back, basically. Then if they say no, then we go to step 2, which is their next supervisor. And we'll say, hey, here's what happened, here's what the violation is, and all of that. We give that to them, and they can say, yes, you're right, we'll give you the remedy you asked for, or no. And if we're still not satisfied, in my case, we work for the Army Corps of Engineers, we've got an actual green suit Army colonel on our my office in Chicago. So you go straight to trial. And so no matter where you're at in the organization, we're going to go and then we're going to present that grievance again and give him a chance to make it right before we're going to arbitration. But then after that, either side can invoke arbitration, and then we each, I mean, in my current contract, we each pay half. There's not like an established bank of arbitrators or anything. We'll reach out to the Federal Conciliation Mediation Service or Mediation and Conciliation Service, the FMCS, and they'll provide us a list of like 7 or 9 arbitrators, and then the union take turns striking names from that list. Maybe this arbitrator is more union friendly, this arbitrator is more management friendly. So we take turns striking arbitrators, and so we get down to one, and then we are. They do come in or do it remotely these days. You can get that to happen. It used to be that they fly in and you'd have yourself a little here.
Yeah.
And so it's not centralized the way that I gather yours is, um, but that's the way it goes.
Ours is basically the same. New York District, nothing is different about ours. I'm sure there's details. Maybe we have 10 days to respond and they have 15 days. There might be little details that are different. That's a pretty typical structure. 3 steps. It ends, or it doesn't end, but the final internal step is the commander. I also have a colonel and a general, 2 different parts of my bargaining unit. But yeah, that's a pretty common setup. And then there is a way to appeal. On the one hand, it's final and binding arbitration, but there is a way to appeal, and especially if management has a very pro-management FLRA, again, that's the Federal Labor Relations Authority, they will appeal on the basis, often spurious, but they will appeal to the FLRA and say that arbitrator awarded something illegal. So there is one more step outside of arbitration, or if you think something was done illegally or contrary to fact, right?
Yeah, that's kind of how ours is. The management will attempt to vacate a decision if they say it's not contractual, and they rarely have any success with that. But that's just them getting bitter.
Can they just gum it up though? Like where they'll appeal it and wait for whoever rules on that, and it goes into some hopper.
You're talking about to vacate it. It'll go to federal court, and then that's usually a pretty good process, though. You don't, it takes some months, but
you can move to dismiss and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so, we've dealt with that plenty of times here, but ours is, talking about arbitration. It's kind of that courtroom setting.
Yeah.
Arbitrators on one end, unions on one side, labor's on the other. The witness comes in, sits at the end. And like you said, you get to cross-examine, question, and everything. There's nothing better than arbitration. It's my favorite thing ever. It's greatest.
It's going to be as nerdy as we are. We relish the fight, but I've learned all this not just on my own, but in spite of the training that I got.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is one of the things we really have in common. And I'm not as familiar. Colin's been catching me up on your podcast. We've listened to it on the drive over from Knoxville.
Well, I'm sorry.
And what I see what you guys are doing, educating the membership directly. Unfortunately, you have to do it. Your union should be doing it.
Yeah.
Our union should be finding the weirdos like us who relish the fight, train us in arbitration, train us in grievance handling, train us in grievance intake and organizing and recruiting, all the pieces of the union puzzle. Train us all, deepen the bench, and our capacity is going to skyrocket.
The position of advocate is not a thing in our union.
Okay. So what do y'all do?
It's up to each local. It's just
all in the name of autonomy. Everybody's autonomous. It's supposedly this great arrangement where you can do anything you want until you do something they don't like.
Right.
But it's basically weaponized against us to justify an extremely low level of service from the union.
Right. That's sad.
My options here. Chris did represent myself at arbitration or hire a lawyer.
Yeah.
Those are my options.
And it'll cost you
that sucks.
On top of everything else, you're paying the arbitrator themselves, and
right now I'm paying a lawyer too. So now part of bringing a case to arbitration for us is an assessment of how much do I feel like I can fight this myself?
Yeah.
How much do we need to bring in outside counsel? How much do we, can I put my head together with somebody like Chris or my other colleagues to understand, hey, have you been through this before, that kind of thing. But even that is barely in place. So it winds up being this tool that the locals can be scared to use.
Right.
And in terms of cost, and before my current contract, my previous contract was literally pays all for the arbitration. So whoever lost that arbitration would pay the entire arbitrator's fees and all their expenses and everything.
That's terrible.
And so, there are almost little differences in how it plays out. But yeah, we now split it 50-50. If you're always right, then loser pays all. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
All.
Yeah.
I want to ask you some questions about the NALC or rather, Postal Service General. You guys closed shop. You have to earn every recruit, or you open shop. Like, how does the membership work? Is everybody automatically a member?
No. If you want to be a member, you can pay dues.
Same as us.
Not, yeah.
What's your rate? Like, how out of your bargaining units, how many people are typically members?
I think we're well up into the 90s,
That's amazing.
which is pretty damn good.
30s on average.
What?
In our region, and then within IFPTE, our federal locals, the 35 I mentioned, it's 20%. We have some.
Holy shit! How do y'all survive?
This is the question. I mean, some locals survive because they're big and they've figured something out to recruit. They've got the formula that works for them. But we've got a lot of locals that are really struggling. And
That's insane.
I mean, we've got one in our Army Corps Council that has a 50-member bargaining unit, that's a 50-member branch, and or a 50, post office with 50 employees or whatever.
Right.
And we might have
10 members?
Yeah, 10 members at best. And so, those 10 members are not only officers doing all the administrative stuff, filing the tax reports, filing the Department of Labor reports, filing all this other stuff,
Oh, God.
paying the dues to international, collecting the stuff from the management, going to all the meetings and stuff. But then they're also zeroes, pulling the grievances. They're advocates taking things to arbitration if they do. We're expecting so much from these people. So then who in their right mind is going to sign up to do that?
Yeah. That's crazy.
It's crazy. It's completely.
That is really high. You hear a lot of people now, you see on social media, everybody's getting out. And I'm like, times are tough right now with our union, as incompetent as it is at the top, with the top two people, Renfro and Barner. But that'd be the last thing I suggest is to get out of the union, because you're going to have that, especially when this new regime takes over. And I think I did an episode not too long ago on that is, you need to hit the ground running with this when the CLC takes over, and have as many members as possible. That way we're not trying to catch back up. And I get the frustration, with incompetence.
Absolutely.
And why am I paying money to a union that doesn't give a shit about me? But man, that's terrible. 20%. God,
And our dues are dirt cheap. And that's part of their justification is like, well, the dues are low, so don't expect a lot of services, but you get a lot of autonomy. And that sounds good, and it does work for some of the bigger locals who have figured it out and have maintained enough of a healthy membership over the years that they have their own war chest and they have their internal capacity. There are a few locals that works for, but out of 35, majority this is not working for us. And we happen to be these particular like
middle ground.
Yeah, our locals we're kind of the middle tier. We're making it work, but the model doesn't serve us. And I think we've done a really good job on our locals. We have some really unique experiences and lessons we've learned. We think we have some things to offer. I think we have a lot to learn from some of those bigger locals. But this autonomy is upheld to justify the silos. Every local is a different, siloed off with little to no coordination. You might happen to have met someone at a union thing, and maybe you exchange their information, or maybe you use the membership directory, but the union doesn't make nearly enough effort to put us in touch with each other. We have this real shared community of interest, and we share the labor law, we share so much, But this is a big part of our platform. We want to revitalize the life of this federal caucus that covers all of us. We want to put all the subject matter experts in a position where everybody can benefit from it, because there are some extremely skilled arbitrator advocates who happen to emerge, people like us who got a taste for it. But most people don't know who they are. Most people aren't in touch with them. There's no like monthly phone call for grievance handlers or for recruiters to talk about how we're getting the numbers up above 30, 40, 50%.
Right.
But that's the stuff that needs attention. And it's not getting any attention.
So our thing is, when you say anybody but Renfro, that sounds good, but the members are smart now because they did that last time. They just kind of took him, on Rolando, who was our president, said, I'm stepping down. We find out the conventions. Yeah. And at when we're nominating people, we come in and we're like, oh, Rolando's not running again. It's going to be Renfro. And so it's kind of just put on us. We didn't have a whole lot of time to vet that. And now, you say anybody but Renfro, and the members are kind of wise. No, that sounds good, but what do y'all got to offer?
Yeah.
What are y'all going to do different? And so what are y'all going to do? What is y'all's thing? You talked a little bit about it.
Yeah.
You talked about you need some kind of, I don't know whether it be a podcast or whatever to educate everybody, because y'all got a lot of different things. A podcast would be, unless you had several different ones, because y'all touch so many different areas. But so what, and somebody, you're sitting in front of your members right now, you would say, this is what we're wanting to do, and this is why we need to do it.
I think some of the basic, what we like to call like the potholes that need to be filled, is just to make sure that every single local knows how to do the basic stuff. Because it's embarrassing to say, but it's true. There are a lot of our locals that don't. And if that means we need a podcast to fill that pothole, or we need an organizing handbook to fill that pothole, or we need
merge locals or whatever it is to build that capacity, but to be creative, to be aggressive in solving these problems.
And the context is going to vary from case to case, but like a real start off. Well, we actually put in our platform, the first thing we're going to do is organize a national survey. We call it a National Representation Survey. We made up the acronym, an NRS, and we're going to poll the entire. First, all the local officers, find out what they all need. And then we're going to, for any local officer that wants to pass it along to the bargaining units they represent, we want to find out what the 33 some thousand federal workers that we represent, what's important to them.
Yeah.
There's no deliberate outreach to occasionally there's no surveys. There's nothing to find out what's important to people. So we want to start with that. Parallel to that, we know there are some locals that immediately need some attention. We know that, there are some places that are, struggling is generous. They're on death's bed.
On the ropes.
Seriously need emergency attention. So we're going to quickly service whatever locals need it in an emergency setting. Heck, we basically do that already. Despite kind of like you do the podcast as a service to the union that the union resents.
Right.
Service to the members.
To the broader union and the cause, and the leadership resents it, and they've actively disorganized us. They revoked our charter because we were getting more and more organized in bringing the Army Corps locals together. A lot of those weak locals are Army Corps locals. So we have a lot of experience in that kind of emergency service. Get them their nonprofit status back because somebody stopped filing the paperwork years ago. Get them caught up so they no longer have any legal liabilities for their Department of Labor reports. So that's the first thing. Parallel or maybe slightly lagging behind that, we need to activate the democracy of our union and it's the federal caucus. One of the things I love about Labor Notes and why I'm constantly coming back to it is because their whole thing is premised on a slogan that was actually the name of a book that they published way back in their early days in the 80s called Democracy is Power. Their premise is that the engagement and activity of the rank and file membership is the strongest determiner of how powerful your union is going to be. If your membership is engaged, if your democracy is healthy, if there are debates that are not just tolerated but platformed and encouraged, if leadership elections are competitive, if people have an opportunity to contend for strategic leadership, that's going to make your union stronger. But what we have instead is the supposed experts at the top who insist there's only one way to do it. And we're the experts. Don't you worry about a thing.
So, I mean, y'all are so much like us. I always put this picture up of these lions going in one direction. It's like, surround yourself with those on the same mission as yours. That doesn't mean that all of y'all have to agree.
That's right.
Now, we're all on the same mission.
That's right.
But when we get in that same setting, when we're in this room like this here, we can have an open dialogue and discuss and debate, but we're all on that same mission. And when you talk about your leaders are like, I'm the one, and y'all, that is exactly what we're doing with
It's the
now
only way to do
with
it.
Renfro. It is, I'm the one. Everybody else is going to kiss the ring. And that's what we're going to get rid of. It's because it has to be we, not me. And when it's always me, it's always I, then you're going to fail. Because when you have that one person like Renfro that says, hey, it's me, not we, we're in trouble. It has to be we. That's the union. And when we talk about everybody's the union. So it's so weird to hear y'all talk like, because, I'm a city letter carrier. I'm going to be delivering mail tomorrow. I don't have any idea about y'all's union. Now I do, but to hear the same things coming, I mean, I guess it's just a union thing.
Well, it should give us hope because what it means is that the things we're facing, both the challenges and the very promising, exciting emergence of this new movement within our unions,
Yeah.
it's not some unique thing. It's not something about the NALC. It's not something about IFPTE. It's something about our society that's given rise to working people standing up for themselves.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I'm not a sociologist. I'm not a political scientist. I can't answer why, but it's here.
Yes.
And it's a rising tide.
Yeah.
And people either got to get out of the way or get with the program because the democracy of our labor movement is the precondition to our success in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And the faster we figure it out, the better the victories ahead.
Yeah, I always talk about that tidal wave when you're talking about it. It's coming. It's happening.
Yep.
And it's that tidal wave, and those that are standing in the way, it's like trying to block a tidal wave with a paper plate in front of your face. It's just not going to fucking happen. I mean, the tidal wave is coming. And I could see it here with this movement that's going on. It has nothing to do with me. But, when you have your Tyler Vassars building a fighting NELC, this kind of from aid arbitration group, these carriers saying, hey, we do deserve better. The status quo isn't cutting it anymore. We're getting run the fuck over. And to hear y'all say the same thing, we're here. We're not going anywhere. The tide is turning, and it's coming in a big way. So, man, whatever y'all want to talk about, if y'all want to finish it out, man, y'all been talking for an hour.
I could go for hours.
But y'all and y'all are welcome on here whenever y'all want to, man. Y'all get your people listening and tell
It's
them.
the same thing. We don't have our podcast.
Right. You don't need a microphone. That's all it took me. And somebody gave me this one, so and then get you a laptop. Man, it is encouraging. I hate to hear that y'all are going through that, especially some things. Yeah, I know y'all said y'all want to keep it, on the
Above belt.
yeah. On the straight and narrow, but I'll be thinking about you, man. And y'all, like I said, y'all more than welcome to come on here whenever you want. We can do Zoom. Y'all don't always have to come to Nashville, Tennessee.
Just same questions like they've been doing.
See, yes, Noble, yeah.
I'll plant a seed before we finish, which is, I think Colin mentioned it before. We have this group, it's very informal. It's called the Federal Unionists Network. And parallel to all the stuff we're doing inside our union to make it stronger and to raise expectations and to challenge some of the problems of leadership, we've also, because of what I described and the way in which the federal sector is carved up by agencies and unions and just there's 2,500 different bargaining units in the federal sector. It means there's 2,500 different contracts with different, or maybe some of them are the same, negotiated grievance procedures or whatever. But we're so carved up. To me, the big picture strategic challenge we face is our division, and we need some unity of action,
Yeah.
some vision, and there will be debates. Like you said, all those lions can march in the same direction, but they can also, we're stronger because of the debate among us.
Yeah.
The decision we come to through democracy is going to be better because it was democratic. And we're trying to build a network. We call it FUN, which was when we came up with that, we never thought it would be this big. We thought at the time it was just fun, and now it's
Right.
getting serious because
Yeah.
we're obviously running for leadership positions in our union. There's others coming. I won't blow their spot, but there's others coming. They're not far behind us, and other federal sector unions on the same agenda for a fighting union for more democracy and the same stuff you are. You guys are federal sector too.
Yeah.
There's no reason why the division, we always look at those 2.1 million civil servants. That doesn't count, you guys. Maybe we should start thinking about the federal unionists network as including all of us. And I would even go further and say all the privatized services that are technically private, like the contractors who do the work that used to be done by federal civil servants. Maybe we should even think about them as part of the same general sector. A sectoral strategy that mobilizes us all together. Granted, there's going to be differences. So many things we share that we have to be in communication with each other. That's the idea behind the FUN network, the Federal Unionists Network. And it's not, I say saying it sounds more like formal and real than it is. I mean, it's real.
Mhm.
Right now, it's a WhatsApp group and a Google group, and we email and chat, and we support each other and we answer questions, but it's entirely rank and file. I mean, it's some local leaders, but they're rank and file members. But it's this growing network of federal sector advocates, rank and file members, local officers, grievance handlers, the people doing the work. And I would love to. You want to join the WhatsApp? You want to just you can look, you can see from afar what we're up to.
Hey, I'm
you can
all in,
jump in
man.
the deep end and
Yeah.
start. And the
We'll get
details.
you the link.
I'll help as much as I can.
Yeah.
And not that I'm anybody, but I'll help as much as I can because I'm about union. I'm about protecting those in me, city letter carrier, y'all's members. Because I despise management, so I'm a little bit different. I just despise them. I think that they're the most worthless pieces of shit that we have to deal with, especially I don't know y'all's. I can't speak for y'all, but supervisors, managers, the things that they do to my people. I'm a full believer in union, strong union, a fighting union. And
I'm about to say that every manager in my office, I'm personal friends with my supervisor. There are some who are really competent and good, but there are some who
yeah,
fit that
and that's
description.
that's true here. Like my manager now, she's fantastic. She wouldn't hurt a fly. And but there are those, when y'all been traveling, you see and hear stories, and I tell the stories. I'm going to read this thing that my members won't believe that this person in labor sent out, but um, yeah, it's time to get back to where it used to be, like in the '70s,
Yeah.
where I don't know how y'all's was, but when we had some Brado, I mean, it was hellraisers, and that's what I want my union to be.
And this is, I could see, we're obviously going to stay in touch and would love to be guests again. And I'm curious,
Absolutely, man.
we're going to be in very close touch, I'm sure. But you just touched on something that I think is this rich opportunity for us to learn about the creeds of the federal labor movement. The postal workers successfully, despite illegally, successfully struck in 1970. PATCO, which is our part of the federal sector, the air traffic controllers, unsuccessfully struck 10, 11 years later. Those two events to me they help explain where we're at, our strengths and our weaknesses. The fact that you guys have 90+% membership in your unions while we're on 30%, I think that's related to that history. There's this rich history that I think we need to sink our teeth into. Our members need to learn. We need to know that we're part of that history just as much as we need to know we're part of a bigger labor movement than people really understand.
So what's next for y'all? Y'all got a vote coming up.
Week from today, almost exactly, it'll be around 4 or 5 p.m.
New Orleans.
in New Orleans. Yeah, we're flying home to be with our families and kids
For
tonight.
the holiday and this week, and then we're back on a plane coming back to the South. We've got a conference in New Orleans in the summer, so that'll be, I'm sure, sticky.
Yeah.
So we'll be.
And you've been to New Orleans.
I have a very, very close and lovely relationship with that city. I worked there. Before I worked for the Army Corps of Engineers, I worked for a contractor that dredged the Mississippi River a lot. And I
Nice.
spent many different stints, a couple of years total, probably working out of or near New Orleans. I was there for the BP oil spill cleanup stuff, and I got to really love New Orleans. It's a tragic city. It's a tragic story, and
Mm-hmm.
it's super complicated, and it's obviously, it's not. I don't love it like a tourist. I love it like somebody who's really seen
Yeah.
its soul,
Underbelly.
and it strikes me as almost a foreign city in some respects.
Yeah.
If you know it, you know, like and when I found out this convention, way before we ever planned to run, when I found out that our convention was going to be in New Orleans, I was like, I knew at the time that there might be some battles at the convention, and it felt like, oh, I'm going to have home field advantage. Because this is like, I really identify with the city. I think it's so beautiful. It's beautiful and it's ugly but
Yeah.
I know it and love it. And I'm really looking forward to being there and to being there with people like you, Colin, and all the other fighters who I've gotten to know, and many of whom I've never met in person. So we're all going to converge. We have big numbers. We're going to win or lose, but we're going to come out the other side of this convention more organized than we are.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep going.
This will be y'all's convention.
Yeah.
How many people will show up to that?
Good question. In the federal sector, which is 10% of the overall IFPTE, what do you expect? There's 80 some votes in play, but
Not nearly that many delegates.
But there are guests. I bet it'll be in that range
Yeah.
total of federal sector. Probably 80 people that we're networking with were federal sector delegates or guests, maybe up to 100. And then the broader IFPTE will probably have a few hundred more, presumably.
I would assume, yeah.
Although who knows? Maybe some of the big locals will just send 3 people because I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. So the last convention, because of COVID, was virtual.
Yeah.
So
That's where we met in the chat on the Zoom, the virtual convention.
Right.
So I mean, that's my first in-person IFPTE convention. I was with a different part of the Army Corps. We were actually a local of the laborers union.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's just more of that same thing. So some of that we're going to learn when we get there.
Yeah, and we obviously want to win this election. We want to transform the federal caucus. We want to build a fighting federal labor movement. But we're also part of a union that represents a lot more than just the federal sector. And we have, big aspirations to get to know what their challenges are. We have very good reason to believe that the democracy and transparency issues that we're encountering are also a problem in other parts of the union. So we want to get to know those people. And like I said, win or lose, come out the other side of the convention stronger, more unified, more organized, with more people who I'm sure we're going to learn a lot from.
And so next week, y'all know.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Ours is in 2 years. Now our convention's coming up in Boston in August, and we'll have about 10,000.
But you don't vote there? What's it?
No, not this one.
Weird.
Now they'll do their,
Is it like an every other kind of deal?
Yeah, it'll be the next convention in LA is when we'll. That's when they.
How many years go by with the current
4.
leadership? 4.
So we got 2 more years of shit with this president.
So you might be going into this convention to organize.
Yes. Yeah, we've already kind of started. We have, kind of who we're going to put forward as the president and James Henry. And raising money, because it's a little difficult, because people are saying, who am I raising money for? I'm going to take your word for it.
Yeah.
That you're going to put a great ticket together. I kind of know some of the pieces that are in place, but I'll let the president talk about that. I'm not going to talk about that for him. But James Henry's a damn stud. I love that guy. And I can't wait for him. He's going to come on and talk to the members, do the question and answer thing. And this cat is top notch. So I'm excited about him. I love Mike Cariff. He was on last week. He's going to run for president as well. But obviously I'm backing James Henry, and I think that's the best decision. And but man, after next week, let me know.
We will. We'll get you the link for the fund.
Yes.
You can put it up on the website.
Yes.
And
I promise you.
Wherever else, Reddit, Discord, all that.
Yeah.
Y'all got a bunch of nice little communities out there.
Yeah. And they're crazy folks on Discord now. There's some rabid dogs around. It's the same rabbit belt now. But this one was just some crazy asses on there. If you wake up and go use the restroom at like 2 in the morning, there's about 30 on there just talking shit. You're like, not bad. Yeah, but you say about the care, man. They're always helping. No, and a lady was got on there the other day and said, "Hey, I just won my first grievance because of y'all, and that's what it's all about, educating."
It feels so good
And
when you hear those stories.
yeah, yeah.
This one?
In August.
Austin, that'll be crazy. That's gonna be wild, man. Wish y'all could come. Just stand on the side,
New York, it's not that far.
Stop on the train.
yeah. But it's gonna be a spectacle because there's a lot of people that are angry, at how our union is doing, and they should be. Yeah, hell, I am.
We have real federally protected democratic rights to organize ourselves to make our unions better, stronger. And they may tell you you don't. They may tell you you shouldn't, but use your convention to advance the project.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for
Yeah,
you guys
it's
in
gonna
August.
be-
And maybe it feels like too far away, but like those next 2 years.
Oh, I imagine it's gonna fly by because you got to get out. You got to hit the street like y'all did. Y'all went down to Huntsville to Chattanooga.
I went to
Yeah.
DC a few
Yeah.
weeks back. We've been campaigning. I mean, what else is there? You're not an incumbent. You don't
Yeah.
have access to the
Yeah.
locals.
Yeah.
We've gotten a lot of questions about why we're raising money and why we're campaigning. Nobody's ever done this in IFPTE before, but we want to win. We take this that seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how for the next 2 years. That's what we'll be doing. Is we'll be out
Yeah.
hitting the streets and trying
Do
to
it.
drum up support, man. But guys, love you to death, man.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure. Been talking to y'all for a little bit, and it's a pleasure to have y'all sitting in my house, man, talking union stuff. As crazy as that sounds.
The reason I reached out to you,
You said you were in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
That's where Chris lives, and I said he's looking for pizza. And if he's connected, and Corey's in
French pizza.
The branch had a local pizza joint that they get from, and it was money.
Is it?
Oh hell yeah, it was good, man. It's what you think about, but they're like, don't get pizza. John Cruz, their president, don't get pizza when you're here. We're gonna get it for you. And
Sure enough.
yeah, there's don't go to Sbarro's. So we're talking about real pizza here. So we got no offense to Pizza Hut.
briefcases there.
And, no, they took care of me, man. But we will do this again. I promise you that. On the other side of it, y'all have to rather Zoom for about 30 minutes.
Yeah, all right.
Then we can do it. All right.
So let's
All right, guys.
let's shut up. There's a team of mine in Kansas, Jason. So I was thinking about him when it's hot and all that out there. And of course, the 11 folks in Chicago.
Yeah.
Great bunch of people there. So
Y'all can shout out to whoever you want to.
Well, my letter carrier, she's a member, and the NALC in New York. I know that you're in touch with them, and I hope they support you. And
Yeah.
anything I can do in New York to facilitate those connections, this labor movement is actually one. We are one labor movement,
Absolutely.
and the more we can do to support each other, the better.
All right, guys. All right, man. That's gonna
Thanks
be
so
it.
much.
Y'all be safe getting home, and we'll talk to y'all
Thanks.
hopefully after. All right.
Sounds good.